So yes, good evening everyone, I'm Natalie Scarsbrook, and yes, I'm a filmmaker, and at the moment I am making a film called Witchcrafts and Stilettos, and part of researching the impact of the Essex girl stereotype, and we all know the Essex girl, you know, if we think back to the 80s with the, you know, the permed blonde hair and the white stilettos, and she didn't have a very good reputation, but part of researching the impact of that stereotype has led me to Syd, and also into the deeper history of Essex women being persecuted simply for being who they are. So that's enough about me. I'm going to be chairing, so we're going to have a very interesting conversation, and then we're going to have some questions and answers at the end. So if you do have a question that you think of during the talk, we are going to have the opportunity to put that to our panellists. So I'm going to start by asking our panellists to introduce themselves, what you do and what expertise you'll bring into the discussion tonight. So shall we start with Syd?
Yeah, the expertise thing has thrown me a bit. I can help anyone with their novels. No, I can't. No, I can't, actually. So I'm a writer. I've written 13 books now, all about different women accused of witchcraft. And what happened to them. So some are standalone. One was about the first one was about Syd Moore in Leigh-on-Sea. She's got a pub named after her, if anybody knows that one. The second one was about Matthew Hopkins. Well, it wasn't about him, it was about the women that he went after. And then an Essex Witch Museum mysteries. And then recently I've kind of like diverged a little bit. And because I'm so weird, I'm looking at how the Nazis, or how the British Secret Service exploited the Nazis' obsession with the occult. So, bit mental. But yeah, and obviously, one of the things that I have seen while I've been researching or over the years is I'm also the founder of the Essex Girls Liberation Front, and we have some T-shirts for sale over there. We campaign to challenge the stereotype. I'm talking too much, aren't I? Anyhow, I'll do really quickly. Anyhow, I looked at the stereotype of the Essex girl, and whilst I was writing and researching about the books, I realised that there were lots of characteristics in the women who were accused of witchcraft that matched the characteristics of the Essex girl. And I'm going to shut up now. Sorry.
Why are you sorry? It's amazing. I'm Lora Aziz, and I am an interdisciplinary artist, community herbalist, currently a tenant farmer, and cultural ecologist is a new little word that I'm adding to my spiel. In terms of, so I bring the wisdom of the plants here today, I think. And I have also written a small book, co-written with over 70 women from Essex, all different women from different ethnic minorities who aren't necessarily from Essex but live here, kind of like me and many other people maybe in the room, and we re-narrated our own versions of the land around us and our connection to that and the plant knowledge, and bringing in global plant knowledge and kind of weaving it with the folk remedies, recipes, rituals of here and now. But yeah, working on lots of different projects. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation, bringing the global and the local.
Hey.
Mine's going to be much shorter than either of yours because I don't have much to say. My name's Emma Wardle. I'm the managing director of the Essex Witch Museum. We are trying to start a museum. We've got a pop-up this week at the Shire Hall, and talking about the witch trials that happened in the local area and how brutal it was and how it needs to be remembered.
She spent a lot, she's not bigging herself up, so I'm going to do a little bit for her. She has spent a lot of time in the records office with some of our incredible volunteers, making sure all of the history that has been curated is correct and factual. So she's downplaying herself a lot. She's done an incredible amount of work. Sorry, Emma, to put you on the spot. Well done. You're amazing. Hi, I'm Elly Prizeman. I'm not from Essex. I'm a charlatan. Boo. I've been in Essex since 1997, so I'm an honorary Essex girl now. I'm from the Isle of Man originally, so folklore and strange history is in my blood. Particularly with like the pagan Norse connections. I am a practicing pagan or / witch, if you want to dub it a witch. So I am the modern witch. I originally was managing a little witchcraft shop, and I started to learn about the Essex history and how vast it was. And I started to go down a rabbit hole and do a lot of research, try to get things factual as well. There's someone in the audience this evening who is a mentor to me to help me get some of the history factual and correct, because for a very long time it's not been correct. And I've got very, very passionate about it, and I now run some walks, and I'm now a director. I was invited recently to be on the board, which I was very honoured to become part of, and that is me, amongst other things.
Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you. So we're all here, obviously, to talk about the women who were persecuted during the witch trials, but I think it would be good to have a really basic sort of summary. If you could, Emma, I'll start with you. How did the witch trials come to Essex? Did they start somewhere else and then come to our borders, and how did they develop here?
I mean, it started in Europe. One of the theories of why they came to Essex... so Essex was known as Witch County because there were more trials in Essex than anywhere else in England. The number is quite staggering. I'll come back to them, but it still pales in comparison to places like Germany and other places in Europe. And one of the theories of why Essex had so many trials is, I don't know if I'm answering the question anymore, had so many trials is is to do with migration. So the eastern area of England, we've had Angles, Saxons, Jutes, Normans, Romans. Everybody's come here. So we've always been a multicultural society, and the witch trials were about othering people. But also because we are literally so close to Europe, the news kind of landed here first before it spread and diluted across the rest of the country. So what was the question?
No, you're absolutely answering it. So,
I'm very tired. My brain's everywhere.
So essentially, what you're saying is, as the witch trials moved through or across Europe, they came to through Essex first, and we got the worst of it because, as you say, it sort of became diluted as it went further into the country.
And I think also because there was this multicultural kind of aspect here, there wasn't such a strong stance in the belief systems, whereas if you go back through particularly like Wales, Devon, Cornwall, the real sort of Celtic areas, Isle of Man, their identity has remained stronger through the years, possibly because of less migration to those areas, possibly just because they're hardcore, but that kind of belief system, I think, enabled them to ignore some of that news that was coming across, some of that kind of concept of persecution that was coming across.
So that really made the women in our county quite vulnerable at that point. So who was persecuted? What kind of people were they going after? Because I'm aware that it wasn't just women that were persecuted. There were obviously some men that were accused of witchcraft as well. But what kind of women were being accused? And Syd, you'll know a lot about this as well from your research. Like, how could you be going about your day and suddenly be accused of witchcraft?
Yeah. Can I add to the how did it happen? Which you're right, I think, by the way. But as well, I think it's like, why Essex? That question is, I think it's worth somebody doing a PhD on, to be honest. I don't think anyone's done it. We've got ideas, but we don't really know. But it is quite extraordinary, really. So anyhow, I looked at your notes this morning, so I wrote down some dates, which I thought were really significant. If people want to know about like how the witch trials started in general, because witches have basically always been around. So the first witch that we've ever heard of is the Witch of Endor in the Book of Samuel, so in the Bible, which I looked up today, and that was about something like 1101 BC. Okay, so that, and she was, it's really weird actually, because she's like a witch. She was consulted and the ghost of Samuel came up. But then actually, as the Bible gets reproduced, then some people say she was a ventriloquist, which is really weird, but because I don't know, because they didn't like the idea of a witch in the Bible or something, I don't know. And then we also, got people like Circe in the Greek myths as well, witches were around basically, and people coexisted with witches until really big date, which have I got this here? So the advent of the Gutenberg press, which was around 1465, I think. Was it 1465?
Something like that.
And then after that, you get these two monks, Benedictine monks, Kramer and Sprenger, who were really anti-women. And they wrote the book, the Malleus Maleficarum, which people might have heard of, which was called The Hammer of Witches. And it was basically how to do a witch hunt. And it basically said women are witches. And they're weak and they're evil. And because they started writing that in just after the Gutenberg press had been invented, that publication then flew around Europe. And that's when you start to get the explosion of the witch hunts. And what was it? I've got this. I don't know if you think this is right, Emma, but 1482 to 1782, over 100,000 people in Europe were accused, with over 50,000 being executed. Who they were 70 to 80% female, disproportionately the poor and the elderly. So again, in terms of who they were, and Emma, you can add to this.
I'm going to say I don't know, but it sounds about right.
Right. Okay. So it is really interesting, because why the people were accused was really because it was not about what they did, it was about what the accuser thought they did, what they believed, and they were projecting onto them. Because as we get the Witchcraft Acts coming in, first one, 1485 or something like that. Is it 1560? Is it
35.
1435. But then it gets repealed, and then it gets brought in again in 1604 with King James.
It was brought in, so it was, I'm trying to remember the dates now. So it was brought in by Henry VIII, then Edward repealed it, and then Elizabeth brought it back in,
right?
And then James ramped it up, basically.
Right, okay. Actually, I wrote these down because I thought these were interesting as well.
I feel so unprepared with you guys in your notebooks.
Oh, no, it's because you sent it. And also, I'm really bad with dates, so I have to sort of write them down. The executions finished, so not the trials, but the executions finished in 1670. The prosecutions finished in 1950, and the last witchcraft law was repealed in, do you know?
2008?
No, that's yes.
1951?
Correct.
She was my tutor. She's still testing me all these years later.
Yes. Well done. Excellent. Distinction. Yes.
There will be a quiz for everyone at the end. Hope you're taking notes.
Yeah. Anyway, so and that, but really interestingly, then that's it. Don't worry, well done. You passed. But then they actually, with the prosecutions, the convictions start not coming, because the law then the government decides that actually you need evidence, right? So that's the thing that stops the witch hunts, really, evidence. So before it was basically, I think that you did this to me, and you don't have to prove it. You just have to have loads of other neighbours say, yeah, they're a bit dodgy. She looked at me funny the other day and then I fell over. And then they're like, yeah, see? So she's a witch. Or there was another thing called the refusal of charity model, which was basically, so everybody was very poor at this time. So people would go round, and though old women, especially who didn't have anybody to look after them, who might look a bit witchy, went and knocked on people's doors and said, "Can I borrow some food? Can I borrow some bread, some cheese, butter?" Usually, they might have been, well, quite regularly in the witchcraft cases, they would have been told no, because we haven't got anything to give you. And then they might have wandered off and gone, "Wah, a pox on your house." And then if anything happened, I know who to blame. It's that woman who looks a bit witchy, who lives down the road. And so that is a model of accusation and that sort of, it's really, I think it's quite interesting that exists in Essex, because actually over on the continent, they're shagging goats and the devil and like having raves on a Saturday night. But here, we just sort of like, well, she shouted at me and cursed me, and then my milk went funny.
Incredibly,
It's just like, very British. I know, it is so British.
Incredibly dull accusations, really, as you say, compared to what some other people being accused of.
If you look at the accusations, they are a bit like, "Oh, well, I started to feel ill after they looked at me funny."
One of my favourites is Elizabeth Lowes, who was the first person executed. You know what I'm going to say anyway. The first person who was executed under the Witchcraft Act in England was Elizabeth Lowes. She came from Great Waltham. And when she was in the ecclesiastical court, so being tried by the local priest, one of the accusations was that she had cursed a woman's lamb and it died. And she said, and when she was being questioned, they said to her, did you curse this lamb? And she said, no, paraphrasing massively, by the way. She said, no, what I said was, if you keep feeding that lamb white bread and milk, it's going to die. And then it died because she kept feeding it white bread and milk. So it was just this, but that was enough to be an accusation of just like, and anyone who's done any farming or anyone who's met a lamb knows that that's just a terrible plan.
They like grass.
So, Laura, I wanted to ask you, because you're a herbalist and things like that. Obviously, I think we in modern times make the connection between, that sort of thing and witchcraft, I suppose, or being pagan and things like that, being, connected to nature and things like that. And obviously that would have been a very big thing in those times, having a knowledge of plants and things like that. That would have been considered, very dangerous knowledge to have and to share. So perhaps you can...
So to contextualise this period of time in history, so we had some dates like 1500s, 1300s, to all the way to 1700s. We can frame that as the beginnings of capitalism, the beginnings of the colonial expansions, the beginnings of when land became a commodity. Beforehand, there was no land market. The land market became something after that. So in order to remove somebody from their land, that poor old woman, she probably lost that field, and then it became open on the land market and somebody made money off the back of her land. That's the history that I'm just kind of like, that is savage. It's kind of like stealing land underneath people's feet. So for me, this is a systemic issue of the beginnings of the removal of us here, people, from the land, man and woman, and then the positioning of women in the domestic sphere, and the division of labour within from the feudal system to a capitalist system, where that division of labour became even more separated. So before we can even start to talk about herbs, herbalism, and then the trajectory from there on outwards, we're starting with kind of, when the fuck did we lose the land, guys? And then I think we can start talking about really herbs and stuff, because then it really does become magic when you can kind of go beyond the veil of the corrugated iron door of industrial revolution, and then another veil of all these periods of histories before we can even then connect again. And then it's like, whoa, that's magic here and now. I'm like, nah, mate, that's just Hawthorne, So it's just essentially.
Yeah. I think actually what you said touched on what Katie said about this building being a brewery, and there is a very strong link between breweries and women in witchcraft, and I don't know who would want to take maybe that and tell our audience about the link between breweries and witches.
Well, do you know what? I don't know that much about it. So all I know that is that they had pointy hats and shawls, and that they had crossed broomsticks outside. Emma, do you know more?
A bit. So some of the stereotypes of the modern witches we know it come from the pointed hat. So where to start? So brewing ale was seen as a woman's part of her household duties. So everyone drank ale. It was the water wasn't safe, so everyone brewed ale. It was incredibly weak. Not everyone was smashed all the time. It was really, really weak. So everyone was drinking ale. It was probably closer to more like a barley squash. But everyone was drinking that all the time, and it was part of the woman's household duties to create the ale for the family. Any that was left over, they would sell to their neighbours and try and generate some money from it. When women went to market to sell their ale, a way of them standing out from the crowd and showing themselves as someone who is selling ale, they were known as alewives, was to wear a conical black hat so that they stood out in market. So that's one of the theories of where the pointed black hat comes from. There are also theories about the cauldron was where they brewed the beer, so it's the witch's brew. The broomstick was to clean, and if you kept a broomstick outside the door, you had ale for sale in your house if you weren't at market. But also things like the cats were to chase away the mice so that they didn't affect the brew. There's like a lot of these stereotypes are coming from this kind of legend of the alewife.
Yeah, and as women became very good at this, selling of ale, suddenly it became illegal for women to be brewers.
And they would put different types of herbs within that. So obviously, if anyone's here drinking a lager, is anyone drinking a lager? Be flavoured with
one at the back. Just had a little bottle in the background going, hey!
What is the botanical infusion in your beer right now? So obviously hops is the most common one, right? Like that we can find in certain beers, but there they had 7 different types of herbs that would be really common to put in the beer. Mugwort being a really, really interesting one because of its like chemical compounds, and it can change your brain chemistry a little bit and give you a bit of a buzz and a bit of a high, if you like.
What's that called again?
Mugwort. And there are beers now being rebrewed traditionally to those recipes, so it's quite nice to be. And I think it's called Witch's Brew. It's often at Land Workers Alliance like parties.
We've just launched one. Yeah.
You've launched one as well. Yeah, epic.
Yeah.
Did you put mugwort in it?
I don't know. Do you know, as you were saying it...
They have removed the gluten, though, through a chemical...
They have. It's specifically gluten-free. It's so Radio City Beer Works, who some of the beers are for sale here tonight, I noticed, have brewed Witch's Brew for us.
Nice.
But I've just, as you were talking about, and we were talking about women being alewives, I was like, it's a man brewed it for us, and I don't know what went in it.
But he's one of us, really.
He's lovely. We love Dan.
So, yeah.
He's an other. He's an outlier.
Fantastic. So it's lovely that knowledge hasn't been lost. That it's still we can sort of essentially revive it. Today.
I think probably has been lost to history. I think there's certainly a lot of people who are working to restore that, but it's because a lot of that knowledge was women and lower class women. It was primarily the white upper class men who could read and write, so they were the ones that could write down the knowledge. So unless it's been passed down through oral history, some of that stuff will have been lost. But there are certainly, I would say, quite a few people trying to reclaim that knowledge at the minute.
Yeah. And Elly, you said to us that you're a practicing pagan. How much of what you practice as a modern day pagan is taken directly from those ancient roots? Has it changed much in the way you practice it now?
It's changed. It has modernised, but the fundamental roots are it depends on your practice, because nowadays modern witchcraft follows lots of different paths. Some are definitely more modern and some lie a bit in the middle and some are still the old ways. I would say I'm an earth element, so I do resonate very much with nature and herbs, and I grow my own herbs and use those in my practice as well, and try to keep things as natural and as unbastardised as possible. But it does depend on your practice. There are some people, again, that will only work with natural things that they've grown themselves or have been grown by another practitioner. And again, you move with the times with anything. And I know lots of people that kind of use electronics and visuals and screens and things in their practice to kind of move with the times. But I think deep down, we all have that old magic, that ancestral connection to things. So it is just a very personal thing, really. But I think a lot of practicing pagans these days is still roots back to the old ways and the magic and you even look at like herbs and herbology and it was herbalists that were quite often accused of being witches in those times, but they were the roots of our modern medicine. That's where it started, and there are still people now that heal with herbs as much as possible, completely. Again, it depends on where you are on that spectrum and how it resonates.
Yeah, Laura, would you agree that sort of like modern herbalist practices are very much modernised? Is there still a lot of sort of old knowledge, as it were, sort of being practiced? How much is remained?
Well, there are clinical trials and pharmaceutical companies that kind of control those trials. So it depends, and there are certain herbs that are more popular than others based on their capacity to be sold. You can tell which route I go down, basically. I'm just like, system. But yeah, so yeah, it is that's the modern side to an exchange of healing, is to offer, like St. John's wort, for example. I'm just trying to think of really simple medicines that might be available. Clove, shout some out. Lavender, yeah. But willow. But then you've got other things like rose and rose petals and other plants that aren't necessarily from the UK. And then, so like 1 drop of essential oil of rose, it requires like 50 tons of rose petals just to produce that amount of oil, which is labour that is happening elsewhere, where, or chocolate, cacao, right? There are 30,000 women right now in witch camps in Ghana today.
Wow.
The witch hunts are still happening, but that is a different industry, and we've just kind of like outsourced over there.
What does that have to do with cacao?
So, Ghana, chocolate industry, land dispossession, and then everything else that is wrapped up into that. Yeah, and then those are mainly women who aren't allowed to, not just in chocolate industry, but other, within the culture and society and stuff.
We don't have to boycott chocolate, though.
Well, there are certain companies that I would boycott chocolate.
Can you tell us?
Cadbury's, Bourneville. I mean, there are definitely lists.
Bourneville.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys.
They were really great. With
Sustaining witch camps in 2025.
So fair trade only.
I'm just gonna.
No, I want to know about what chocolate I can eat.
Yeah.
So here they sell
Definitely.
Is it Tony's chocolate only?
To be honest, I don't know. Please do research. It's up to you to make conscious decisions on where your medicines come from, where your food comes from.
My chocolate, I shall from now on.
Please do, because you may be contributing to. That's the luxury, right? That we're sitting here talking about witches of the past.
Yeah.
But actually, there are women. Just Google it right now. Witch camps in Ghana, and you will find out what I'm talking about.
I didn't know about that.
30,000 women.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point to say that obviously our witch trials are over. We've, enlightened ourselves and we've stopped going after women, but absolutely there are places in the world where it still goes on, and it's eerily similar. The types of things that the women are accused of, the way that they're persecuted.
But can I just also make a point as well, because we do have a lot of child abuse cases at the moment. Which are and I wrote this down as well, sorry, which is between 2016 to 2017, there was over 1,460 cases of child abuse linked to faith and belief. and some of that is about the belief of witches.
Does that
as
include
well.
like GFM?
I think it does, yeah.
That one.
FGM, yeah.
Thank you. You know what I meant.
There's often, if you get FGM, you find there are spells or spell work or something like that, which is with teeth and things. And quite often as well, there's, I've always said, wherever you find people being persecuted as witches, you will find witch finders. And quite often with this, you will find someone who can cure that child who is accused, but it will cost you £200 to do it. And so it is, we can't just say, oh, we're fine. It is going on over here.
I think it's something that people are quite surprised about when we start talking, and I mean we as in a general anyone that is having these conversations about witch trials, is that people talk about them still happening. People are quite surprised because they think of the stereotypical Halloween witch as if it's a thing that actually existed and we hunted them all out and they're all gone and we're so much better as a society now because they're all gone. But either they were people, and B that it is still happening in around the world, in literal witch hunts around the world, but in also the fact that witch hunt is part of our vernacular. It's a common phrase that is thrown around. Because there are still groups being persecuted and othered, and although we might not treat them quite the same as we would have done the witch trials in England, there is certainly still that othering, that treating them as inhuman, as different, as evil. And so I think both sides of that are really important to remember, that there are literal witch trials happening around the world still, and there are figurative witch trials happening, and it's not that we are so much better as a society, that we have grown and we have, developed past that. It still happens.
We're just calling it something different now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to just touch back on, we were saying about how certain professions were marginalised. So we were talking about the breweries, and obviously the herbalists as well were accused and persecuted. But there was also something I wanted to bring up, was midwifery was a very big profession for women, and that was targeted as well, because obviously there was a lot of knowledge held by those women, often had a lot of crossover with herbalists and things like that. Obviously they would have had their own medicinal talents and ways to help the women and the babies, and of course midwives were accused as well. In your research for the Witch Museum, how did that sort of affect local populations? Because I can imagine going after midwives would have caused a lot of distress, amongst.
So part of so when Laura was talking earlier about this, the kind of era being this rise of capitalism, it was also the period in which the establishment of the medical establishment was kind of created and was growing and things, and part of that was to discredit the cunning folk, so people who used magic to heal, not harm, was to discredit them as the local healers, so that people would be encouraged to go to doctors. And the doctors were primarily, again, sort of upper middle class white men who had knowledge, who had been able to study and could read and write and things, and charge. But they were also far away. They weren't necessarily people who were in your local community that you trusted and that you knew. So for the most part, for like the everyday stuff, people would still see the cunning folk, even though it was looked down on, and even though there were these laws that were sort of persecuting witchcraft, the cunning folk were generally seen as separate. There was some crossover. If you were a cunning folk and you had this knowledge and you said put a pox on someone and then they got sick, you'd be blamed for it and you'd be accused of witchcraft. But they were generally seen as separate groups. But try and remember where I'm going with this. But the midwifery was like the alewives. It was seen as women's work. It was a while before. It was quite a long time before midwives were accepted as an actual profession, and even longer before male midwives were accepted as quite acceptable. That doesn't make English. I'm so tired. It's been a really long week. But So the midwifery was seen as women's work again, and it was as this medical establishment grew that responsibility started to be taken away, and the women and their knowledge was being discredited, so that the medical establishment could take ownership of all of this. So a lot of the knowledge of women's bodies in particular was lost. If anyone isn't aware of this, a lot of medical studies are done on men and assigned male at birth men. So there's a lot of knowledge about women's bodies that either has been lost or hasn't been taken into account in modern medicine, and that is something that we are still overcoming in modern society.
It's
that is
everything. Everything, like cars are designed for men. They're not
there was
designed
only
for women. It's just added on.
It was what, in the last
still
2-3 years that they've started doing
tests.
Actual female crash test dummies.
It's just like the
and
whole
it's only
thing.
in the last, I think, 5 years that they've started testing menstrual products with actual blood. It's like...
Yeah,
The
it's really
midwifery is still
recent.
prevalent today. In England, you can have a home birth with community midwives. The government slowly wipes out all of those companies that offer a home birth because they want you to go to hospital. And in America, you can actually get Child Protective Services called on you if you want a midwife come to your home rather than paying a doctor in hospital.
And giving birth in America is something like $20,000.
Oh, at least.
To do something that is
everything
that
goes
is a natural
perfectly,
thing.
yeah.
I mean, the life expectancy, so infant mortality, plummeted in the mid-18th century. It reached its lowest point in the mid-18th century, and it'd been steadily declining since the 16th century as the medical establishment was coming in, as these midwives were sort of being discredited, and it is slowly now creeping back up. So the medical establishment isn't all bad, but there was definitely, it had a significant impact for, a couple of 100 years. So we are, I would say, still recovering from that.
And it was, I think, as well, because of it was high infant mortality back then. So again, if you were birthing a child and the baby didn't make it for whatever reason, there was really no medical interventions that we knew of at that time. Then if the baby died, then again the midwife would be looked at as, it still kind of happens to my stepmom is a midwife, and sometimes, mortality is very low, thank God, but sometimes when it does, it's like you do look at the midwife. So back then it was almost like a death sentence.
It still happens, it still happens today that it's the fear, and when something bad happens, people like to have someone to blame for what's going wrong in their life, and the witch trials were good. There was an example of when things were going wrong, people were blaming and accusing people of being witches because something had gone wrong in their life, and they just needed to blame someone. They needed a reason. They needed to find a reason behind it of this nonsensical, awful thing that had happened, like losing a child. Like when you go through the court records, there's a lot of instances of she cursed me and I became lame on my left side. So potentially they had a stroke.
Yeah.
And it's
and also
an awful thing that comes out of nowhere, and it's scary. So finding someone to blame can give you some comfort in this awful thing.
And also I think there would be this issue. So everybody believed in witchcraft. So it was just, you didn't have anybody going, are you sure about that they did that? No, it's like everybody just totally believed it. So actually, if you look at Papua New Guinea as well, so they're losing lots and lots of women at the moment because of their witch trials. It's the same thing. They also think if something happens to a family, then their attitude is, who did this to me? It's not like, they don't look at, so if they had a car crash, it wouldn't be like, right, what happened with the car? It'd be like, who? And actually, some of the people that I've spoken to who've been working out there say they think that the Western idea of cause and effect is really naive. Right? So you just don't understand that actually there are dark forces. And this is what we were dealing with back in the 1600s, and I've forgotten my point now.
That's okay. Laura, you were going to say something.
Where did I go? Oh, midwives was it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what we were
How did
talking
I get
about.
onto that? I've got no idea.
I think I just wanted to. I just had a baby, not right now. But like I had a baby. Somebody asked me what his birthday was today at the library. I was like, last year. Yeah, last year I had a baby, and so I was really reading into a lot of this. And a really good book is by Rachel Reed, and it's called "Reclaiming Childbirth as a Natural Rite of Passage." It's like essentially it's where I went with being pregnant, just like. It's very important, but it's again one of these really like heavy, weighty, like lots of jargon and stuff in it. But it was really good. And I learned about, I think the etymology of midwife, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, is like with woman, like midwife, with women. So it wouldn't necessarily be one woman, like as the way we imagine it now. You've got an isolated pregnant woman with an isolated midwife. There'd be lots of women in there. And they were called godsips, which were your god sisters.
Right.
And they would be, so, quick, fetch a pail of water, like, we need to wash, we need, somebody go and cut something, and somebody bring fresh linen, no, because it takes a lot of, like, you need a lot of hands, right? There's never, like, one person in the room. And then that is where we got the term gossip. From, because you'd have these women in a space where men couldn't go, and it's this space, like this political, especially in the rise of like, okay, the domain of the domestic sphere is, okay, we know what that is, and men and women interact like that in that space, and then we've got like this space when a man is just like, even now, I mean, the man's role in childbirth is this kind of like threshold of like, I don't know what to do, and then women are just like, get there, and I think that energy is so important to understand that space was so politically like problematic for men, especially in that time where, even the baby would be born and then they'd sit and they would wet the baby's head in circle, in ceremony together, drinking, talking, baby mother would be resting, but the other women were like, fuck yeah, we got another one, or commiserations, no. And in those kind of enclosed spaces, it was really fascinating to also watch how that is like a coven, right? Or like as a group of women who are problematic. And then that's when also that group of women could be all collectively being deemed as like an issue, and where problems would come because no one would know, or they've been saying this about she's a godsip, and that's what, and then it would,
It's the unknown element,
hearsay,
isn't it?
yeah.
The men weren't allowed in the room, so they didn't really 100% know what was happening. I think it was Henry VIII who did it so that women started giving birth on their back, because he wanted to see the baby coming out.
I think that was that Louis? I think it was French King Louis the 14th or something like that.
Royal births had to be witnessed by everybody as well. Babies took swapped
to make sure that,
which meant
to
you
make
had
sure
to
that they could
still.
see the baby was coming out. Whereas the 17th century had.
Because it was like it's like the witch was the opposite of what women should be. So it's like they were baby eaters as opposed to looking after it. There's lots of engravings. If you think about Goya and the European artists who were sort of chronicling these men's fantasies, really, everything about the witch was, so the witch would ride on a broomstick, but backwards as well. So everything was like inverted. It's like the witch was the opposite of the good wife, basically.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what we're saying about where the term gossip comes from. Linking to the film that I'm making and linking the modern day Essex girl stereotype to those Essex women who were persecuted. Syd, you've obviously done a lot of research and you've got your theory about how they connect. And I say to everyone I speak to, I totally subscribe to the theory that the seed of the Essex girl stereotype came from the women, or from the witch trials, because so many Essex women were persecuted. The seed of this, this idea that Essex women were louder, more outspoken, of looser morals, lingered in the public subconscious till the 70s and 80s, when, women are financially independent for the first time, the sexual revolution has happened, they're going out and they're enjoying their time with their white stilettos on and their permed hair, and that's fine. And this stereotype comes to put them in their place, and especially with the classist sort of undertone of the Essex girl stereotype, because, she's vulgar, she's shallow, she's easy, compare that to the Sloane Ranger stereotype, who's very put together and well educated.
But also Sloane Ranger's gone.
Exactly.
But the Essex Sloane Ranger.
Sloane Ranger.
Sorry. Yeah. So basically, Sloane Ranger was like Princess Diana was a Sloane Ranger, like the Lone Ranger, but Sloane Square, kind of thing. But exactly, you don't know. So it's just gone. Yeah. Lots of 80s stereotypes have gone.
She was very posh. She'd often have pearls, and she'd be well put together, very educated. I mean, the stereotype was that she was looking for. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you compare that to the Essex girl stereotype, who's dancing around a handbag in a nightclub in Romford, and it's you can see the misogyny creeping in there just a little bit.
But also,
same.
There is so the other thing I was thinking about today as well, because. Actually, don't go there, Syd, but just be very quick. So, again, if we go to the Malleus Maleficarum, so this Hammer of Witches, blah, blah, blah. So another thing that it said, and I think this is really relevant to the Essex girl, was the witches, they used glamour, right? So, but glamour was a spell. And glamour made, it still is, yeah. So, but glamour was something that you used to make yourself look better or different. Filters, yeah. But also, because they were so mental as well, like Kramer and Spenger, they said they talked, well, actually, now I'm thinking about it, it's another thing cropped up. But anyway, but they also said that some witches used glamour on men's penises. Right. And their penises disappeared, and they used glamour, right? And the penises disappeared. So I'm just going to sort of quickly, the thing that I actually thought of was, does anybody regularly read the 14 Times here? No? Oh, it's a shame, because there was a massive spate of Nigerian penis theft in 2023. Just popped up there. Honestly, there was. It happened. So, but this was it. Oh, they were. Well, the thing is, there's lots of people who were saying, it's like the size of a grain of rice, right? And they were like, and other people going, yeah. But then, apparently that man over there, he's a sorcerer, he'll get it back for you. Only costs £250 or £225 to you and your brother, Oh, mine's gone as well. Yeah, and it's also hysteria. But if you put that in terms of a man's penis not functioning properly, not working, shrivelling in the face of glamour, and you add that into the demonisation of the Essex girl and the way she looks, there's something else going on there as well, I think.
Definitely.
Can I add a burning point just onto that? Is that like there's a book I also read, Caliban and the Witch by Sylvia Federici, best thing out there, in my personal opinion. And she's talking about, as well with like the division of labour, domestic sphere, the value of a woman's body and like the sexual and the value of sex, which is glamour, everything that we're talking about. And in terms of like, well, a woman's only sexual value is to procreate. And so anything after, like, an older woman can't have a sex drive. And I still think that is a mega problem today. Like, you know, with like, you know, like you'll see it on like The Sun or whatever, like 70-year-old woman, like takes a young man, and you're just kind of like, all of this kind of stuff. Or like the women that go out to the Caribbean to go and like get their young Rasta man or whatever. And I think there's really interesting stories. But yeah, and so they were saying how like the broomstick, she mentions how like the broomstick is meant to be like that elderly woman riding on a penis. Yeah. Because she's just like, you know, like horny and elderly and can only go on a broomstick. I think it's really interesting, that whole idea of like about sex and women and the body and like the value of it. And even then the Essex girl, she's young, right? She's not, in your mind, she's not the woman at the fish and chip shop, like who's, you know, whatever. She's a young, prey, valuable sex, I think. So
yeah. Can I quickly tell the story of the broomstick? And
go for it.
Yes, is it the flying?
Yeah,
brilliant. Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
The filthy one.
I love it. I love it.
So
shocks people, though.
It does, but it's so much fun to tell. Everyone's over 16 here, right? Yeah, cool. Right. So we've done this as part of the trial, and we've trail. Sorry, I was going to say child. Trial. No, it's just so tired. Trail. I've said the words trail and trial. I've said so many times this week. So there's a walking trail around Chelmsford this week about the stereotypes.
A walking trail and a
trail. That's a different thing. And as part of that is talking about the origins of the stereotypes of witches and where they come from. And we have it mentioned in the pop-up at the Shire Hall as well. And on both posters we've had to ask us for the 16+ explanation because it's filth. And it's supposed to be family friendly. But there was some debate over. So witches were said to ride their broomsticks at night to the Sabbaths, which were meetings with other witches and the devil, where they would have orgies and they would all have sex together, because it was women on women, and you can't have lesbian sex unless there's a man involved, and so it must be the devil. And also, women were more likely to be susceptible to the devil because wombs were cold and they craved the warmth of semen.
And they're stupid as well, they're frail, they're weak, blah, blah, blah. Yep.
Seriously, read the Malleus Maleficarum, it's weird. But part of that debate was whether the witches were actually riding a broomstick and flying through the air, or whether they believed they were riding a broomstick and flying through the air. And so the consensus in the end was that they were creating this flying ointment, this hallucinogenic balm from different herbal plants that had to be applied.
Now, don't forget, she said trial back on.
It's a bit trial and error, you know. I haven't tested this one, I'll start with that. The ointment had to be applied to an area of thin skin where it would be more easily absorbed into the system. And the best way of doing that was to lubricate a broomstick and insert it and ride the broom.
Makes so much sense.
So they were basically
Standard Saturday night.
So it's this element again of women not needing men, in the same way that there's this whole element of queer society now of how could you not need a penis in your life, but
because we've got brooms.
Because we got brooms. So essentially, they were being accused of getting high and having a wank. But the but the first person who ever admitted to riding a broomstick was a man, which most people don't expect. But the most famous person to admit under not torture, because they weren't allowed to do torture, so they did bloodless torture, that's the whole thing, who confessed, was a French noblewoman So the witch trials weren't specifically restricted to just lower class women. It was anyone was at risk, basically. But yeah, I just love telling people that story because it's filth, and people don't expect it, and it's so much fun to see their faces.
Yes, definitely all enjoyed that story. It's fantastic.
Well, that's why it is. You have to ask someone, and then we look around to make sure there's no one too young.
Yeah, like
No,
how
all the
do
kids do
you?
earmuffs.
I'd love to know more about how you're going to do that. How are you going to tell us?
I've done a question.
You can come and see us this week.
It's got to be something like Fly Garrett.
Yeah.
There was.
I don't know.
I found there was somewhere that had the.
Yeah, but no.
There was somewhere that had the recipe, but I can't. Yeah, I can't.
New rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But Fly
I will try and find the.
drunkenness.
There was a confession somewhere where they admitted what was in the flying ointment, but I can't remember it. But I will find it and I will send it. I will send it to you. And then you can make. Do you know what?
I was like, witch's brew, witch's ointment, also available in our museum.
Imagine if you like put it in a beer.
The
I
Witch
will
Museum
say-
gift shop is really expanding.
Amazing.
I will say that if you look on Etsy, people are selling it.
Are they?
People are selling flying ointment on Etsy. I don't know what's in it. I don't know how legitimate it. I wouldn't recommend trying it, but
There is actually a natural. She's a herbalist, and she has created a herbal lubricant, and so she probably has gone down that road. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, but one that.
No, to be sold in like Tesco's, etc., and other places that you can. Anyway.
On that modern note,
I don't know. I just said that.
not the dirty note, on the modern
normal.
note.
So let's just get everything in a food shop. Right?
Yeah. So bring it.
So so Syd's theory of the Essex girl stereotype being linked to the witch stereotype is Essex girls were quite often known as being sexually loose, right? As being sexually liberated. And the Malleus Smell of Crime and a lot of this stuff is about women being sexually liberated of being widowed or having sex outside of wedlock.
They were also
fun
like
with broomsticks or
loose, as in not protected by men. Yeah. So loose back then meant not protected by men. They didn't have the shelter of a man, and then when they were taken to court, they had to have a man speak for them. So I always say, so they were legally dumb, right? So then you go loose, lower end of the social class, and then dumb. And then
we all get told that we're thick.
Yeah. Well, that's dumb. Yeah, dumb.
That was a secular decision of the state. It wasn't necessarily something that people were. Yeah.
Access to education for women though was like notoriously not going to make us clever.
It didn't really exist, is the thing.
Exactly. So we were thick with a capital F.
But Essex women were not thick, we're very, very smart. So bringing it back to the modern day, we've obviously touched upon a modern day flying ointment and things like that. And obviously, how old... No.
Do and tell us about it.
Buy from a reputable seller at the very least.
I don't want to hear about your
I
splinters.
think we should have a reunion this time next year and just see what happens, find out. Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's interesting how sort of things are being rediscovered or brought back into the spotlight. I'm interested, obviously with the Witch Museum, it seems to be in the last year or so that sort of the mainstream consciousness about not just the witch trials, but actually witchcraft as a practice in religion has really sort of come to the mainstream. And I'm not entirely sure if there's one particular reason why that's happened, but it's obviously it's happened. So I want to hear from the panelists, starting with Elly, if that's all right. How do we see modern witchcraft? How is it perceived nowadays? Are there still sort of preconceived notions from times gone by, and how is it changing?
It has changed so much for the better, definitely for the better. When I was a wee teen goth girl in the 90s, I would get young kids staring at me and going, "Mummy, there's a witch." And it was all very like, oh, God. And you'd watch The Craft and you'd be like, oh, they're weird. The weird goths and grebos. But now it has become fortunately, everything's become very, very diverse and very accepting. So now people don't tend to batten. I mean, I still get it. I will get, if I walk through town and the very hardcore Christian groups are out with their megaphones as our friends, I will get targeted, absolutely, because I look a certain way. So there still is an element of assumptions. But as a whole of society, people have become very, very accepting because we've just grown, I think, and you can be this kind of pagan or Buddhist or Muslim or Christian, and it's fine. It's the same with like sexuality and where you identify in that as well. Everything's become so much more accepting. The biggest flex for Essex, particularly Chelmsford, that I was associated with was me and my friend Nikki ran a little witchy stall on Chelmsford Market. And when the council asked us what we wanted the sign to say, because they have all the little signs saying suitcases, records, they were like, what do you want on your sign? And we're like, well, we'll try, see what happens. And we asked for witchcraft and spirituality, and they just approved it. So we actually had in letters on a sign outside the market, witchcraft advertised. Now, obviously, the times where the witch trials themselves took place, my goodness me, you could never absolutely in a million years advertise that you were even a practitioner of magic, but now it doesn't matter. And there's become this massive umbrella that any other non-Christian based religion will fall under, which is paganism in a whole. But you've got so many different branches of it with like Norse and Wicca. I mean, even Wicca, I don't know if everyone's heard of Wicca. It is the most common witchcraft religion known, but it's actually a very modern one. It's not an old one. It's like there are much more older, like Norse particularly, and Greek mythology and things. But Wicca is actually an invention. And again, it's got a very nice underlie behind it because it's to try and be more positive for people to care about each other. So this whole law of three, why are you laughing? Oh, the law of like the threefold, and if you put harm out, but then that's Buddhism.
Yeah.
Because Buddhists have practiced that for way longer than pagans have. But it's to kind of protect people so that you're not, because I do believe what you put out and you get back. So if you're throwing out a load of negativity, then you're probably going to get it back. But it is wonderful to see now when people sort of, when the subject comes up nowadays, you're not looked at as mental, maybe you should be sectioned for having this type of, and it is a religious interest because people practice it on their daily. It brings them soothing, it brings them hope for some things. It is similar to sort of praying and worshipping and rituals. It all integrates, but it's nice that it has become so much more accepting where though the only thing I would like to see now is when people, like, you fill out forms and they're like, what's your religious practice? And I always have to put other.
Yeah.
But you can even put you're a bloody Jedi on the census.
Yeah, you can now.
But you can't say that you're pagan on a form.
Yeah.
It's not
Need to get more
okay.
people put it on there.
Yeah.
And Laura, you say you're practicing herbalist. How do you feel like the perception of that craft is nowadays compared to perhaps times gone by? How do you feel it's received?
That's a really big question.
I think it's interesting because you see a lot of now like rewilding projects to actually put those native plants back that were taken away because they didn't serve a particular purpose. Exactly, they would have never have taken them away. So I'm a little conscious of time, so if it's all right with the panel, I think it would be nice to open it up to some questions. If anyone has any questions for any of our panellists on anything we've talked about, or if you want to raise something new, that would be fantastic as well. So go on, who's going to be first? There we go.
You're all involved in some very, very important projects. Where do you see those in 5 years' time?
That's a big question.
Everyone looks at you.
Come on.
Taking over sharp.
You've got a clear vision.
Yeah.
Some days.
So we've been in the Essex Witch Museum has been an organisation for coming up 2 years now. We, as I've said numerous times because I'm very excited, we have a pop-up in the Shire Hall this week. We're there every day, Monday to Sunday, 10 till 4. Come find us. I think the big goal for us is a permanent location. So this is our first step on that journey to create a permanent location, to be having these exact conversations more often. I mean, not everything. The broomstick story is not going to be part of the exhibit because it's not family friendly, but it's these conversations still need to be having and need to.
You're okay. You're great.
The words. Having these kind of conversations and talking about the people as well, and not just in the statistics. Like we'll talk about numbers. Like we'll talk about the fact that so we compare Salem because everybody knows of Salem. It's known as this witchy place. So Salem had 150 indictments. 1 person died in jail, and 20 people were executed. In Essex, and that's a 1-year thing. In Essex, it's a 200-year period of history. And so far, with our research, we are at 836 indictments, 47 people died in prison, and 107 were executed. So 5 times the amount of Salem. And that's not to say what happened in Salem wasn't awful, and it was awful, and it should still be remembered. But it's everywhere else should be remembered as well. And Essex is as a part of that, and it's trying to remember the people, not the number. So Salem is somewhere that has had extensive research, has had a number of different historians and media representation and people through the years that have looked at that and told the stories of those people and dug through their lives and what happened to their family members, and people like to claim that they are ancestors of Salem and things like that. It's bringing that element here, that human element of locating their stories, and particularly, I mean, the people that were executed, we kind of know what happened to them, but we kind of don't as well. We don't know where their bodies are. So there isn't there's not a grave we can go to. It's today we're going to walk to the Shire Hall because that's where the assizes courts were, where most of them were tried. But it's not everyone. There's not a single place anywhere for a memorial for everything that happened, and it's part of our. It's not even a 5-year plan. It's a lifetime plan of. There is so much to tell for all of these people. There are still more court records that we are going through that do exist. There are plenty that have been lost to time that might be in someone's loft. They could be in a church basement. They could be anywhere. Or they could have been fully, destroyed, and we will never find them. And there will be people that we can never tell their stories. But I see this being the rest of my life in a fantastic and very daunting way. That this is it now for me. That it's this drive to tell these people's stories and to give them their identities back. Like the people who are listed as Widow Common is one of them. So we've been researching Widow Common. She never made it to trial. She was tried by a mob and swum 3 times and then died probably of pneumonia. I think I've found that her name is Margaret, and I'm trying to fact check that in a minute so we can confirm it and give her identity back. But there's a lot of people that were listed as good wife or widow or one or mother, like trying to give them their names back so we can tell their stories appropriately and properly. And it's going to be a lifetime, and it's big. It's so much bigger than me, and I kind of hate doing stuff like this anyway, because I much prefer to hide behind a screen, but also because I don't want this to be about me. It's not about me. I'm doing this because I have the capacity to do this, and it needs to be done. But it's always going to need more people, and this. I hope that the work we're doing will inspire more people to write like Syd does. I mean, Syd inspired me, but so Syd was my tutor in college, and when I worked at the Saracen's Head at the top of the high street, and I was sitting in a hotel reception and I was researching the history, and you came in researching your second book?
Yeah, it was the Matthew Hopkins.
But Syd was the one who told me that the assizes were held at the top of the high street, and then went on to write the Essex Witch Museum mysteries, which are based on the stories of people of Essex that were tried for witchcraft. And I want more people. I want more art. I did a talk in March to the Hive Artist Studios, and they've got an exhibition this week in the Meadows about witchcraft in Essex and the stereotypes of witches. I want more of that. I want the amount of media. That is the melting pot. The amount.
I think that is a very important point to make. That visit the Witch Museum, pop-up museum, because they need support to show that it needs to be permanent.
And do cut me off when I'm talking, because I'll go on forever.
So if you had the choice, how to remember all those people and where that memorial should be?
I don't know.
Isn't there one already?
There are some.
John do one.
Yeah, so John. So
We've got
John.
the lamppost.
There's a couple. So there's the lamppost on Duke Street that Shelley Ings did a few years ago for Concrete Canvas. There's a memorial in Admiral's Park that John Morland did with I think Enola was involved in that as well. And there's an oak tree there, so it's like a living memorial, and there's a plaque. And there's one in Colchester's Castle Park, because Colchester Castle was majority where them were imprisoned. There's a memorial there. I think there's a few boards around Manningtree Mistley. There's now the Tendring Witchcraft Trail, which has got some chainsaw monuments and things. I think that's the answer, realistically, is a number of things. I don't think there's any one way to honour the people and to...
A physical museum.
Well,
Yes.
There's a physical museum. That's a permanent thing.
Have you seen the monument at Vardo, which is absolutely?
I have heard of it. I
stunning.
haven't been.
So Vardo. Has anybody seen it at all? It's like an island in the Arctic Circle. So I think it's either Denmark or Finland. No, hang on, not. Is it Denmark or Norway? Which one's in the Arctic Circle?
Norway? Norway's further north.
Norway,
Yeah.
okay. And so they had a population of 365, and they had a witch trial, and I think they lost about 96 people there. And so they've commemorated it. It's stunning. Go and Google it, look it up. There's a lovely little video.
There's a really good book about the Witches of Vardo, but the name has escaped me at the minute. Find me afterwards, and I'll try and look it up.
Yeah,
I think it's really well written.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's been written quite recently.
Yeah.
Where the people are starting to look, but this, which is great, this memorial is stunning. It's very spooky because obviously it's in the Arctic Circle, so it's either constantly light or it's dark. Well, it's not either or, but it's.
Have you visited recently that you were telling me?
I've never been. I'd love to. But it's sort of like a canoe on its side, because obviously they did a lot of fishing, and then the canoe sort of shape. It was created by Louise Bourgeois and the architect Peter Zumthor. I probably pronounced that wrong, but a lot of money, and I think the Queen opened it. So huge recognition of this wrong. And you walked down this monument, this sort of canoe shape, and it had windows either side. So in the dark, they would have candles. But in the light of summer, it would be dark inside and light outside. And then you came through at the end, and there was loads and loads of mirrors around. And then you came through, and there was a fire in the middle. So obviously they burnt them over there. And so you come out and you see yourself through the flames. So there's a kind of, there but for the grace of God, go I. And it's stunning, and it's very silent.
It sounds quite haunting.
Yeah, so it's something like that. I mean, that's, really ambitious, but I mean, why not?
Why not?
Why
yeah,
not?
let's manifest it, because I have started doing a little bit of work on trying to get a monument. I would like it, I mean, you know where I would like it, Alan, already. I would like it where the Assizes was. Whether or not I'd ever get it there is a different story. But I know a sculptor he's won Chelsea Flower Show 10 years in a row. He's very, very talented. And we've kind of hashed out a few ideas, but now I need to kind of go through some red tape and funding. But I would like it to not spark a negative and sad emotion purely. I would like a part of it to show what happened, because it's important to remember, but then I would like it to change into something empowering of where we've come and where we are now. It's going to be at least a 2-year project, but I'm going to try and see as close as I can get to the garrison, like Saracen's Head, because that obviously is where the Assizes site was. That would be my dream. That would be my dream. Whether or not I'm granted it is a different story. But I've started putting some slow wheels in motion to see where I can stand with it.
I think one thing that I want to jump back to is when you were talking about the kind of stigma has changed and people aren't so anti-witch anymore. I disagree. I think
you want it to be something?
No.
Oh.
No. No, I love your monument. What I disagree on is that people don't have the stigma against the word witch anymore. I think that still exists in a massive way, and we,
does,
as an organisation, see that on a regular basis. People see the word witch in our name, and they have these preconceptions of what that means. And the amount of people that have come into the exhibition this week and have been shocked and pleasantly surprised that we are talking about history and the trials and the brutality of it, but presenting it in a factual way is awful and lovely, because it's this thing of people are expecting the stereotypical Halloween witch. They're expecting the modern witchcraft. They're not expecting the story of the trials and what happened. So it's this. That stigma still exists, and there are certainly certain organisations, who I won't name, who have been very anti what we're doing purely because they see the name and they make their decision before hearing any of our aims, any of our plans, any of our ambitions. They see witch in the name and they're done.
Yeah, I have been told that I can't use the word witch without inverted commas.
But I think that's quite good, because they wouldn't have seen themselves as witches.
No,
they would have seen themselves
would have probably
as
been
Christians.
God-fearing people. Yeah, they were people.
So I think for that. But I understand your point of view as well, and I think it's like something that everybody needs to talk about, because it's like we've all got different ideas. But I just think you go back to those women. And also one of the things for me that's always motivated me is, like, if you've ever been accused of doing something, like I had a brother and sister, so, I was always getting blamed for doing stuff. If you've ever had the absolute outrage, indignity, and if you imagine, being accused of this magical thing that you could not possibly. And then it going all the way through to trial, and the absolute injustice, facing the noose, when that, and then, I don't know, the commemoration as a witch, which is what you've been told. I don't know. I think it's fine in terms of, like, the Essex girl some people identify as Essex girls. They love it, right? And I always think of it as like, it's like a mask, okay? So if you want to put on that mask and go, yeah, I'm an Essex girl, fuck you, great, do it. If you want to put on the mask of being a witch, I am a witch, I am powerful, fuck you, do it. But it's when someone puts it on you, you're an Essex girl, you're a witch, that's the difference. So I think it's like it's nuance. It's kind of nuance because some people think it's great, some people would like it, but
That was also my response to this whole panel. It's really funny because, I just got the email from Katie and she was like, oh, do you want to be on this panel? We're talking about witches and witchcraft. And immediately I'm like, no, because I hate it when people put that label on what it is that I do. Yeah. Because witchcraft comes from, as you've said so amazingly, it's just like, it came from the outside. But nowadays it's been used and people have kind of reappropriated it in some ways to become their own. But actually it's still super problematic, as you're also finding out. So I was kind of like, well, I don't want it to be like framed as in like, okay, I do this and therefore I am therefore considered witchy, even though I have, my own practice and belief systems around things, but never in any way would it be like, so it was just interesting that even coming to a panel, you're already kind of fighting that.
It's such an interesting term.
100%. Still is. It still is.
Yeah, definitely. Do we have any other questions? Oh, yep.
Yeah. I believe a while back, Nicola Sturgeon gave an apology about what happened to people that were persecuted in Scotland. Would it be good for that to happen here? Or exoneration of the women, not a pardon, but
by the state.
The exoneration of them being persecuted in execution.
So I'm going to jump straight in before anyone else can. So there has been some talk recently about people who are tried as witches in England being pardoned, and I really like that you said not pardoned, because. So I was having a conversation with John Warland, who's a local historian, but also is an ex-policeman. He's very anti-pardoning because pardoning is admittance of there was guilt that what they did was wrong, but we forgive them. That's what pardoning is. So the problem is the only other way around it is to sort of revoke I've forgotten the words he used. I did have them on email, but brain's gone. The word, entirely. But it is a much longer and harder legal process to go through, and there are bigger problems in society that need to be going through the legal system at the minute, which is a weird thing for me to say because this is my whole life. But
I think the pardoning as well. About 20 years ago, I saw something in the Evening Standard when you used to have to buy it. That's how long ago it was. And it was about somebody was trying to get a pardon for the witches of England. And I thought, I'm going to get in touch with them. And then, so I phoned them up, got in touch with them, and it turned out to be, it was a publicity stunt for that really famous fancy dress shop, which is on Shaftesbury Avenue. Bo and can't remember their name because Bo and something like that. So I phoned them up and I just said, I think this is really, really great. And they said, well, actually, we're just doing it for Halloween. And anyhow, it was just really to promote what we did, all of our Halloweeny costumes. I was like, oh, right. So, well, what is happening? Are you still going to do it? And they said, well, no, not really. And we've just found out that actually the Queen, it was at the time, the Queen has to do it. And she has to do an individual pardon for each person named. So they were like, you just can't do it. So I think like and also that for me as well, it's like logistically that is going to be so difficult. But what about all of those people who slipped through the fingers of history, whose names we just don't have anyway? Who, like, Sarah Moore, she didn't go to trial, but she's stigmatised. She's there. Yeah, it kind of like needs to be some kind of statement, exoneration, maybe.
Somewhere in the middle, maybe between. Yeah. Have we got any other questions from the audience? Ah, lovely.
Laura, you spoke so beautifully about the disconnect between, you know, humanity and the land, and this kind of like rise of like patriarchal. What's the word?
You don't share room?
No. What's the word? Money.
Capitalism.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Man, yeah, love it, love it.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
And then obviously, Syd, you spoke about how during witch trials, the midwife and like losing a baby and everything would kind of become blamed. And it feels like, are we that far away from a modern witch hunt where women are like, their phones are being like searched and all these things? And then also, I think your parallels of this tribute to the witches, where you'd come out and it'd be a reflection of yourself. I just feel like, how far away are we from these women, and is being a witch and being a woman inextricably linked?
Yeah.
And what can we do, like as a community, to make sure that we are protected, you know, from this happening again?
That's a really, really good question.
So many different elements.
I think the witch is woman in so many ways. I mean, Marion Gibson wrote a book which came out last year, which was 13 witchcraft in 13 cases. Was it? Yeah. And she started with this woman, Helena. Can't remember her name. German. Or something like that. And she ended up with Stormy Daniels, who is, she identifies as a witch. I think she's Wiccan, and looked at all of these different women who have been completely demonised and you know, tried. And you sort of look, when you look at all the different witch trials, not just here in Essex, but Scotland and around Devon as well, and Europe, you just realise that all you had to be was a woman. You didn't have to be a witch, you just had to be a woman. So the witch is woman, really, yes. And so it's so important, the work that Emma's doing, to get the feeling that you want to commemorate everyone, so we can almost draw a line in the sand and just go, look, this happened, we can't let it, look how horrible it was, come in and see it, can't let it happen again. But then I just, you know, which I think is brilliant, but I just think that society, I thought for a while that we were moving forward, and then every so often it feels like we're going back again, you know, and I don't know how, we need to have a new media or something, I don't know, because, like, you know, even when we got the Essex girl definition out of the dictionary in 2020, out of the Oxford Learners Dictionary, and that one said an Essex girl is a girl or a woman from or around Essex who is unintelligent, materialistic, talks in an ugly, loud and ugly way, and is very willing to have sex. Right, that was the dictionary definition in the Oxford University Learners. That came out. Sort of, it was covered by loads and loads of media, and who did they have photos of next to it? They had the cast of Towie, loads of different pictures, and you know, it was just go, we've got it out, and so the media are just like not letting it go. They're just so, you know, yes, I think it's really important. I think exactly what you said. You know, woman is a witch. We need to commemorate it. How we move forward, I think we just all have to carry on doing what we're doing and talking to people and making people see as well, and making people understand what happened in the past and how people conflate stuff. And, you know, as well, we need to empower the younger generation of Essex girls from Essex, to be more powerful, and I think actually the Essex girl, before I used to say, oh, she's just, you know, she's this, why does Essex get it? Because, you know, you see people who are like stereotypical in Newcastle, in Cardiff. Why is it Essex? Why is it Essex that get it? But we're completely the same as everybody else. But now I actually disagree with that. I think that Essex girls are stronger. because we've had to deal with the stereotype. So they are more articulate, they are more confident, and they're more prepared to holler back. So I think the younger generation are about, getting them to see it, to embrace it, to understand, and to move on with more confident women who are prepared to call things out and challenge and have the support of their older sisters, to do that.
Do other panellists have any final thoughts to add to that question?
I mean, it's mega. Like, just thinking about women's wombs, right? And Trump and America and abortion rights and And then recently I just saw a photo, like a poster on the wall. It's like with Nigel Farage's face on it, saying that they're also coming to implement like those kind of abortion policies here in the UK as one of like their potential points. That right there, it's not too far from what we've been talking about. So rise up in anger, know your rights, but not just the rights that, the legal system gives you, like the rights of your body, right? As women, your intuition, your skills, but then also how not to have those being like sliced up by a system that doesn't pay you for domestic labour. Like, it took me hell of a lot to get here tonight, and the whole way down I was like, which fucking it's like, like unpaid labour, unpaid domestic work, like all these sort of things. They're just like feminism, right? Like, at the end of the day. And so my real like passing the baton on would be like, how does the Essex Witch Museum not just draw a line in the sand and be like, okay, that's done, witches are like this thing, like I like kind of like put on a shelf and then in a museum, where museum culture is kind of like, it is giving it a place in history or a period in time where it's kind of like stopped and kind of glorified or protected. It's very say clean. And how do we then actually bring the relevance in kind of contemporary museumology? I don't know. It's like, how do we make it relevant to this? Where is the feminism? Where's the activism? Is that a thing? Because I feel like it has to be.
Oh, it has to be, and it is. So it's
linking back to your work, yeah.
So it's a big part of the exhibition is as you follow through as you go through the journey and you learn so you start off with life in Tudor England and the difference of everyday magic and the witch versus the cunning woman versus the wizard and all that, and as you're coming around and you see about these people that were persecuted and you learn about the midwives and all this, and the ending of it is questions directed at you, and it's challenging people who have learned all of that, they've gone through and they've read all that, and they have read the awful things that happened, to reflect on themselves and consider whether they are persecuting or othering anyone in modern society in the same way that was done then. Because we, is the famous quote, learn from history so you don't repeat it, and that's wrong, but you know what I'm trying to say, that thing. But we can't draw a line in the sand, because this will never end, because it's kind of a cyclical element of society, and it's shit, but it keeps happening, and as you say, it's happening again now. And I don't know if it was you, Kelly. Someone tagged me in a post recently about witchcraft, and it was witchcraft has cyclical elements of popularity. We're in a moment again at the minute where the witch as an archetype we go through these periods of the archetype being this method of storytelling and of holding a mirror up against society, and it's often when there has been a plague, when there has been political unrest, when people feel that they have lost power and control over their own lives, and we can all identify with that right now. I think we've had COVID, the world is a bit fucked right now, and everyone's feeling like everything, you can't control it. You don't really have control of your own life. So a return to witchcraft and that vision of the witch is something that people are returning to at the minute because it's a way to take the control back. So I think as a museum, we can never say this is what happened and that was that, because it will always have echoes through time. It's unfortunately is something that is, as we said earlier, figuratively and literally still happening. So it's not a conversation of, and I think it's a really important point to say that it's not, there were witches, we killed them all and they're dead now and that's that, solved. It's, you know, it's this societal issue of needing someone to blame. And I use myself as an example in this when I'm talking about this quite regularly, is for a lot of people, I walk with mobility aids. My illness seems quite erratic to people outside. The symptoms aren't always obvious. And for a lot of people, it seemed to be quite sudden, like an overnight change, that I suddenly was much sicker than I'd ever been before. That I suddenly needed mobility aids. I was suddenly in hospital a lot more. And if I had been alive during the witch trial period and I had developed this illness in that same way, would my family have looked to people around me and blamed one of them for what had happened? So I think the important thing is to look at both sides of the story. So it's not a story of good versus evil. It's people. It's both sides of the coin. It's in the same way that we see now people who are anti-migrant, anti-women, anti-everything, who are scared, really. They won't admit it, but they're scared and they're looking for someone to blame. And I think it's that, again, is my family, my friends might have looked to find someone to blame for my illness on my behalf because they loved me so much. But you think about if that happened now, if anyone blamed a person for what happened to me now, we'd think that's ridiculous. But that's the reality of it, was this fear. And I think that is what's driving a lot of it now, is fear.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to draw the discussion to a close, is that it's so relevant still. I mean, we're obviously talking about it with you know parallels to our modern lives. You know, that's why we're all here this evening. We want to learn a bit about history, but also how does it reflect on us now? And so it's always going to be an incredibly relevant part of history for us to look back on and learn from. And I hope you all have learnt something today. Thank you very much to our panellists for joining us this evening.
So fascinating.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, really good.
And thank you all for coming. So I'm going to hand back over to Katie, because I know we've got like the candlelight walk to Shire Hall. She knows all about that.